Today I am preparing a video for you on the use of the Edge tool. It's part of the Edge certification process, which is very close to the Green Star rating. I think you all are aware of that and must have come across it. The Green Star certification process that's being headed by the GBCSA, or the Green Buildings Council of South Africa. And the Edge tool is aligned with them, and one could in many ways see it as a more cost-effective way of certifying a project. We are interested in this tool because it gives us the opportunity to test and assess the impact of certain sustainable strategies and what that might mean for your design in the end. So we will not be looking at the whole certification process and the documentation and so forth. You're welcome to research that in your own time, but we will be looking at how this tool can be used to inform design decisions, and hopefully you can use it in future to convince clients of certain strategies. And I hope that if you are a familiar with this tool and you start using it, that in future you will actually have a few projects that would want to undertake an EDGE certification process. Now, first of all, I need to note that this EDGE certification process has been developed by the IFC, so they're part of the World Bank, and their intention or mandate is to develop sustainable or private sustainable strategies. So there's the World Bank obviously promotes governmental regulation and so forth as well. So it's kind of top-down strategies, but this is very specific strategies to implement to assist designers, architects, and so forth, or interior architects also, to make certain design decisions which would lead to more sustainable projects. You will see that I have developed a short PDF document which just gives you the basics of the tool itself. You're welcome to use that along with the video in order to understand the tool. And I really hope you use this and play around with the tool, because it's actually quite a simple process. Um, I think before I introduce the tool, it's important to understand how the EDGE certification process works. I will maybe I'll just quickly show you how it looks on the screen. So the first thing is, remember, you can log in online. The information is on the PDF document. You will then log in, give your details. Don't worry, they don't spam you. It's obviously just you have to have some way of identifying who actually logs in at that point, and you'll get down to a main screen like this. Now you'll see that the main screen ultimately has a bunch of specific project information that you supply, and then in the end there's also a comparison that takes place. So there's the base case and the improved case. Now, why I think this is important to just be aware of, this is how the actual certification or the assessment of a project takes place. So you will see that we've discussed, and we will discuss in this course, a number of modeling processes. So some would require very basic modeling processes where you can develop your own ways of assessing whether a design is improving or not. And then there's also modeling programs like Zafiro, which we'll be using, but we'll be using others, or there's others as well, that look specifically at your design itself, and it assesses that design and gives you a performance factor of that design. Now, the Edge tool works a bit differently. It basically requires that you set up a base case, which is developed from the best practices of a certain region or place. And then on that base case, which is basically project perimeters that you basically add, you will be able to identify or implement a series of sustainable strategies, which will not be implemented in design. It's purely as an assessment process. And that gives you ultimately a comparison between what is typically the best practice or the typical practice within a context and what the improved context is. So effectively, it's a comparative assessment process. Now, what is important is whenever you do comparative assessment processes is to understand what the comparison is. Now, you can compare it to possibly the worst building ever or something that was developed in 1760, and we will all say, wow, it's great. You've basically added insulation and it's a lot better than the original project. But if you compare it to something that's very poor, your design decisions might look very good, but it might mean very little because the comparison is incorrect. On the other hand, you can also compare it to something that performs very well, and therefore you'll never seem to improve on a well-performing building, possibly let's say the most sustainable building in the world, and that might still seem as though you are making poor decisions, even though your comparison is incorrect. So be aware of that the edge tool takes the base case of South Africa. If you can model it across the whole world, but in the South African context, it takes the base case scenario, which is the SANS 10400 regulation. And in this case, if we talk about energy consumption, they use the SANS 10400 XA regulations. So what it means is the base case is already a pretty standard but well-performing building. It's remember that the SANS 10400 XA standards are not in any way reflective of a highly effective or efficient building, but a building that follows good practices. So improvements on that starts leading towards a project that is of quality and therefore is of note. So it is a very good comparison to use, but if you ever come across a tool that does a comparative analysis, that's a very important first step, is to understand what is the actual comparison that is being undertaken at that point. I will stop this movie here, so it's short for you to download, and then the next video will then go into the actual setting up of a project within this context.